Good evening, Gerald. It's a pleasure to have you on my show tonight. I'm so excited to have you here because the topic we're going to talk about is phenomenal. And I think it's something that a lot of people need to be taking into consideration because it's not just about them when it comes to finances, it's about their future. So
Exactly.
before we begin, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do?
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and excited to share with you all. So a little bit about my background. So born and raised in Miami, grew up with two parents in finances. My dad is a financial planner who I work with now. My mom was in accounting. So for me, this was something I kind of grew up around, but ran from it. I was a rebellious child growing up. So I interned with my dad in high school and interned in college, but I had big plans to get as far away from Miami as I could. So I ended up moving to Virginia, where I went to school. And then after school, ended up transitioning to DC, where I worked in corporate America for about 3 years. But just where I saw my life going and what I wanted to do didn't really align with where I was at. Uh, so did some soul searching, and that's when I ended up coming back home to join the family business. So I've been here now for about 4 years, helping build and grow the firm. We have actually recently just launched our own firm within the firm called the G Financial Group. We service over 600 households, helping them plan for retirement, small businesses, doing business planning. So that's pretty much where we're at now. And then now we've recently launched a book to help take it the next step further. So a lot of good things happening for us.
That's so exciting. And it's funny that you talk about, going as far as far away as possible. And then, you end up coming back and kind of making it your own. And I love that you mentioned helping over 600 households with retirement and overall financial planning. And today I want to discuss something a little bit more specific. So let's just, get right going. What is the difference between wealth and generational wealth?
So the biggest difference between wealth and generational wealth is, well, let's take it a step further, right? So when you just talk about wealth, a lot of times people associate making a lot of money and having nice things as wealth, right? So yeah, wealthy people make a lot of money and have nice things, but it's a lot more to it, right? There's a mindset, there's the habits, there's the values that they have that help them accumulate that wealth to get to where they are. Um, but the next thing about that is when it comes to generational wealth, just like wealth is more than just making a lot of money and having nice things, the same thing applies to generational wealth. So a lot of times wealthy people think that just because they have wealth and it's going to go to their kids, that naturally they will have generational wealth. But it doesn't always work like that, because if they don't understand the things that it took for you to get that wealth, they won't know what it takes to maintain it. And as a result of that, that's why you see statistically 70% of wealth dies in the second generation. And that is because of the simple fact that a lot of times we give them the car without teaching them how to drive.
Okay, so do you think it's important to build generational wealth? If so, why? And what are the potential positives to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely important because if you do the right things and to build wealth and provide for your family, you're going to get to a point where you can't spend it all, right? So if you can't spend it all, naturally, you're going to create wealth that goes to the next generation. The difference is, do you want to have kids that are going to squander it, or do you want your wealth to die with you? Or do you want to build something that can last, that they can build upon, right? Because the generational wealth piece of it is setting them up to be successful when you're no longer here. It's not about the money piece. It's more than dollars and cents. And that's the subtitle of the book, because a lot of times we just think of wealth as money. Wealth is knowledge, health, all of those different things that play into it. So by building that up and teaching your kids how to be good stewards of money, putting them in a position to get a good education, to then get a good job, to buy their first home at a young age. It's all a cycle of creating that generational wealth, and then they can in turn do the same for their kids. And that's how the cycle continues.
So practically, you're talking about creating this generational wealth. How can someone create it in a practical setting and also make sure that it's not squandered in future generations?
It's a great question. So a couple ways you can do it, right? So the first piece has to do with education, like we talked about earlier, right? So the sooner you learn how to be a good steward of money, the better off you'll be. When I was real young, my dad, and I never really thought about it until we got older, and he tells a story, but he made us read a book when I was 10 called The Richest Man in Babylon. And he gave us this stupid assignment that if we, if we read the book, we write an essay, he'll give us $100. So I said, okay, I want the money, so I'll do whatever you say. But those little habits, like pay yourself first, live within your means, love what you do, are still within me today. And that is the reason why I've been able to be successful and do what I've done at a young age, because I had those things instilled in me when I was very little. So that's a part of generational wealth, educating. And then the next part is you got to put a plan in place to protect your wealth, right? Because one thing is, you may not make it to get to that point where you can transfer the assets, right? So what's going to happen to your family then? Where the insurance comes in. And then you may make it to retirement, but what happens if what happens if a health condition erodes all of your assets? What then? And then what happens if you give it to the kids and then they squander it? It's where the wills and trusts come in. And then when you think about majority of Americans, majority of their assets are their home, right? A lot of households in America, their largest asset is their home. But guess what? You can't put a beneficiary in the house. So what happens if something happens to you, right? You spend all this time and energy going through the probate process, which costs you attorney fees and all of these different things, when you could have put together a simple document like a will that transfers that to your heirs.
You're absolutely right. I think, as you mentioned, education is the cornerstone to all of this, is making sure that people understand the importance and know how to get started. And just how you had that book when you were younger, I think this book that you just released is going to be that book for future generations and current generations. So tell us a little bit about this and where someone can buy it and what people can expect to learn from it. Because I'm actually really excited. You just gave me a copy. I'm excited to read it and learn for myself.
Yes. So the book is designed, again, to talk about that educational piece of wealth and how to put together a plan, what should be in the plan, who can help you put it together. But the part that I love the most about it is the beginning that talks about how you define wealth, right? Because I think, especially in today's society, we struggle with trying to figure out what that means for us. And I always like to say, like, hey, if you don't define what it is for you, you're going to spend your life chasing somebody else's dream, right? We watch TV and we glorify celebrities and all of these millionaires, especially Instagram. You can go on any page and see all of these things that are going on. And it's hard to say, all right, what do I want? You got to sit down and say, what lifestyle do I want to live? Because for everybody, that's something different, right? You don't have to be a billionaire to be wealthy. You don't have to have tens of millions to be wealthy. You can be comfortable with a couple 100,000 or whatever the case may be based on your lifestyle, right? So you have to figure out what type of lifestyle do you want to live, and then how do you fund that? And then from there, that's how you start to build wealth around you. And then that's how you start to establish those principles and instill that generational wealth. Because at the end of the day, money is just a resource, right? Nobody wants money. We all want what money provides. We want security. We want freedom. We want the ability to travel and do what we want to do. But none of that has to do with the actual dollar the currency, right? It's what money can do. It's just a resource, right? So that's one of my favorite parts about the book. It talks about that. And then going into educating the next generation, you got to lay the foundation, right? So I keep saying it, but the foundation is key. Like, we use the analogy in the book like a skyscraper, right? When you think about how do they get those tall buildings to not fall over, right? They have to dig deep in the ground, put a strong foundation, and then from there you build up. The higher you want to go, the lower you have to dig in the ground to develop that foundation. So the same thing applies when we want to build wealth, and wealth that will last for generations. The stronger your foundation, the longer it'll last, and the more they can build upon it. And then from there, how do you find the right people to help you put it all together, right? No one just wakes up and knows how to put together an estate plan. So making sure you have the right people on your team to say, hey, these are the things that you need to be doing, and this is how you get it done. And having the accountability, have somebody holding you accountable to make sure that you do get it done. Because the thing about an estate plan is there's no second chance, right? It's either in place when you need it or it's not. So it's about making sure that you have something in place so that way when the time comes, it can be executed to your wishes and your family will be okay. Every family is different. So you have to figure out what that looks like for you and how it all fits in.
I think that's great. And I agree. It's all about the foundation. So before we close out, if someone wants to buy the book and get this information for themselves, learn about wealth, learn how to get started, how can they buy it? Where can they go?
So you can go to powerofgenwealth.com, or you can look us up you can also look us up on Instagram at the Power of Generational Wealth. And you can definitely get the information there to download your copies or buy your copies.
Perfect. And lastly, Gerald, if someone wants to talk to you directly about learning more about building generational wealth, or having someone to reference for the holistic planning, as you were talking about, so that way it's not squandered or there's not more money spent on probate than actually just putting in a will or trust in place, how can they contact you? What methods of communication?
So there's a couple ways. So you can look us up. You can look me up on Gerald Grant III.com, or if you want to learn more about the firm, you can go to the gfinancialgroup.com.
Perfect. I think this has been very educational. I think anyone watching this video is going to enjoy everything that you talked about today. So thank you so much for joining me. Good luck with the launch. I'm so excited for you, and I hope that it's very successful, and I wish you have a wonderful night.
Thank you. You too.